Yes, I know. It's been a while since I was last in front of the camera. If you didn't know, me and my wife do a podcast called Hindsight. And I guess that's where my attention has been for the last couple months, to be honest. I think we started in December. It's February now. And where we left off, I think I was talking about my mother. It went well. She came, we got to spend some time together. It's just interesting because she's a lot like me in some ways. I can definitely see the similarities between us, but I'm not sure. I guess for me, it's a clash of personalities. I'm a very unique person. Very few people I can say resonate with me. I'm not really talkative per se. I'm a very quiet person by nature. I'm the most talkative at all. I find most conversations kind of pointless. I guess that's because I can't even say. I guess I've always been like this. I've always been introspective, always been quite in my own world, to be honest. I'm always thinking about what's the right thing to say. Is there ever really a right thing to say, to be honest? Looking at the world right now, it just feels like everyone is just caught up in some thing and some perception. It feels very chaotic right now. I have in my Instagram status, chaos is a ladder. It's a quote from Littlefinger in Game of Thrones. And it's very chaotic. If there was a time to climb a ladder, it would be right now. The world is just going through it. And I don't know. I think I've reached a point where I've become a bit more pessimistic. It's not to say that I don't believe humanity will come out on top or that humanity will get better. It'll just take some iterations of suffering and pain. And what's been on my mind as of late is just humanity's illness. If I could choose a profession right now that I think would be very important and I could have all the resources that I need, the profession I would choose is teacher, but not just a regular teacher teaching like high school or university subjects. The most important lesson I think humanity needs to learn right now is self worth and how to love yourself. We're all fighting, everyone's fighting to prove how valuable they are. Everyone's so insecure. All the billionaires, leaders, they have what everyone would consider a lot. But from my point of view, they're empty on the inside, trying to prove that they are the most important and that they'll have legacy. So much pain. And it's not just the billionaires and the leaders, it's just humanity in general. Everyone feels unworthy. And I'll clarify what I mean by worth. Generally, when we go about this world, we're trying to prove that we are of value in some form or fashion. And that leads to some very dangerous thoughts and actions. To prove you're worthy, some people will push other people down. They will try to make sure other people don't have as much as them. And I know I speak about capitalism a lot, especially in the Hindsight podcast. But capitalism, the way it's currently set up, it leans into the fact that humanity's current struggle is its own self worth and self image. There's just too much focus on making oneself more valuable than someone else. And that's how nations are, and that's how people are, that's how families are. Our sense of worth is so external. We don't believe that just because we were born, just because we were given flesh, just because we were given this experience, that we're inherently worthy. And I want you to ask yourself seriously, are all the things you're doing, all of this Instagramming, statusing, all of these things you're doing, aren't you just looking for approval from something outside of yourself that says, hey, you're worthy? But is it ever enough? Is it ever enough? If it was, if there was a certain point you can reach through external means that qualifies you inherently as worthy, I don't think people will be as greedy. I don't think after a certain amount of fame or wealth or whatever, you would hoard resources. People who are inherently worthy don't hoard resources. They don't put down other people or nations. Humanity is weak because it doesn't believe it's worthy. And you know what? It's being currently drilled into us constantly. And I could go back. It's not even just capitalism, it's religion. Religion told you that you are a product of sin. And in order to be worthy, you must worship an idol or a god or something outside of yourself because you are inherently unworthy unless you follow this rule or do this. Again, you're always being sold your worth. Stop buying your worth. It's not outside of you. And no matter how much you try to fill it with things outside of you, it'll never be enough. But that's only one part of humanity's problem, self worth. The next part is change. We are so afraid to change. The thing with progressive and conservative, you would think that the progressive view is the most likely to change. And in a way, it is. In a way, progressive is the most forward thinking. But there's corruption in that. People only push for a cause to make themselves feel more comfortable, not necessarily because they think the cause will better everyone else around them and humanity in general. And I have to bring this back to the idea of veganism, LGBTQ. All of these things are causes to make you feel more comfortable in one way or another, which is fine. But there comes a point where there's a, I would say, oversensitive reaction towards everything. Listen, you're trying to become comfortable in one thing, in one area of life. and you push to make society accept that point of view so you can be more comfortable. What happens is you will push up to that point where you're technically comfortable, but what you've been fighting for isn't perfect. There's underlying things that need to be examined. There's more to a situation than just, I want to feel comfortable and this is how I will feel comfortable by pushing this agenda. It's fine to push it to make your society safer, to make it more conscious in a way. But there's a stagnation point. I don't know if I'm making any sense. I think I haven't flushed out the idea around humanity is resistant to change. And I think it's a battle between being more progressive while also acknowledging the flaws in the progressive nature because it's only being pushed to a point for personal comfort. And I think a good example of this would be touchy subjects. Things that people are not people things are hard for people to talk about. And see it get stuck right here because that's where humanity is at currently. It's unsure of anything. A touchy subject for most people is transgender. And I think it's one of those things where you're pushing for an agenda of people should be able to do this, or even pronouns. I have to be called this. And if you don't, you're oppressive. But pushing it to an extreme removes all the nuance of the situation. For example, how many studies are there around transgender and body dysmorphia? Thinking about it from a psychological point of view, even a spiritual point of view, when you're given a situation, right? Even medical, given a situation, and I'm all for like body modification. If you like to stylize your look, if you like piercings, tattoos, whatever. But I find that there's not enough research done to understand mental illness and body dysmorphia and how that can lead into wanting to change of sex. And I say this because there's so many risks and harm that you can go through by messing with your hormones and I would say mutilation of body parts. And yet no one, it's either you're conservative and you find it blasphemous, or you're really progressive and you don't want any pushback or opinion on it. Two extremes of a side. And I'm bringing this up in relation to change because the biggest asset we have is information. And we don't use it properly. And I think it's it's really weird to live in a time where we have access to so much information and people are still ignorant. And I think that it's not just the population's fault, it's also the current ideology of science. It's very dogmatic. Why are people so stuck? For example, my wife would go to her job and she would talk to her coworkers. But hearing their opinions on what is technically public knowledge and they should be able to understand, they just don't. And I bring that back to diet, for example. How many people know that gluten is bad for you and it's inflammatory? How many people know that carbohydrates is the main cause of diabetes? Do people even know what carbohydrates even are? How many people know that saturated fat isn't even the deadly cause of heart disease and that has been debunked? I mean, there's so much information, and I guess the reluctance to change that I'm currently referring to, maybe it's just an awareness and an information issue. It's really hard to explain. It's really hard to explain what I'm seeing in my head. And I think maybe the first issue of self worth creates a blind spot for most people that they can't see a bit deeper into current reality. If you're always looking for validation, if you're always looking to prove that you're worthy externally, then you might not even care. I watch people do the most unhealthy things to themselves, and you can give them the answer to heal, to be better. But it's not important to them. It's not important to humanity to be healthy. It's important for humanity to think that they're worthy, to prove themselves, even if they have to die in the process. So I guess I'm back to square one of what I was talking about. Yes, I would be a teacher. I would teach self worth, true self worth. Because a lot of people just say that, but they don't know what it means. Same thing with self love. You don't know what that means. People think self love is going to a bakery and getting a sweet treat. I think self worth, acknowledging you're worthy, is a prerequisite to self love because you only treat things gently and I would say respect and care if you think it's worth to do that for it. You yourself, if you say, if you know you're worthy, then automatically that opens up the gate for you to care for yourself better, to eat better, to take your mental health more seriously. But I think that's it. I think that's all I'll say for today. I started off talking about, I was going to talk about my mother and my connection to her, but I don't know if I have any words for that as yet. I'm just kind of sad at how humanity is doing currently. And it's like I can see the reason why it's folding in on itself. But all I can do is watch. But yeah, that is it for today's episode. Thank you for watching and have an awesome day.